TDPK Podcasts, Thailand GameChanger, inside the minds of Thailand's innovators. Hi, this is Michael Waits, and welcome back to Thailand GameChanger. Today, we are joined by Nattapon Kraisingkorn, the VP of Venture at Amity. How are you doing today?
I'm feeling great. Thank you for having me this time.
It's awesome to have you here. Look, before we dive into the main topic, I want to get a little bit of your background for context for our listeners.
Okay. So I have engineering and finance background mixed together. I have undergrad degree in Chulalongkorn University in industrial engineer. And that's a standard pattern for Thai people who love math and physics. You go to engineering school, basically.
Right.
And I worked for 2 years and I continue my master degree in Boston University. Dual degree in Master of Science Technology and also the MBA.
So what made you go to Boston? I love asking Thai people this question, right? Because in Thailand, at least in my entire time here, and I've been here for 10 years, it's never been below 16 degrees Celsius.
Yeah.
What was it like being in Boston in the freezing cold in the wintertime?
That's a good question. So I doubt now why I have to live in a country that in the winter it will be go to like feel like minus 20 degree. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I think the most powerful for me is the most powerful factor is the branding of the city. I have an image in my mind that Boston will be the city that I can go out talking about startup idea with any person on the street.
Right.
And I cannot find that environment in Thailand at all.
Okay.
Yeah. First criteria that I choose university from is any university in Boston. Just anywhere in Boston.
Right. Did you get the sense when you were there? Because Boston is a city that literally goes from millions of people to very few people in the summer.
Correct.
Because the student population there is huge. Did you feel that there was a massive student population when you were there? Did you get the energy from it?
Yes, I feel. But they are not really a student. You can look at them as someone has professional experience before. Some of the CEOs still in the city as well as a student, as a status. Right. They're amazing people.
Yeah, it was. Look, my family's from Boston. I was raised in Boston, so I have inside information about this. But I'm always amazed by it. And because I grew up in the Northeast in the United States, I always say, if I ever see snow again, it'll be way too soon, because I grew up shoveling the snow off the sidewalk so my dad could take the car out and go to work, right?
Yeah.
I hate every second of it. Why were you so interested back then in being in a place where you could have conversations about startups?
Okay. My family is a technology family, I would say. So both my dad and my mom work in the technology fields. My dad actually, in today's world, I would say my dad opened a startup before. And I have a brother, and we both have a background in technology. We discuss a lot of ideas to start new business and stuff.
Okay.
But it never come true. So to the certain point that I graduated from industrial engineer, we have a lot of ideas working as a side work besides our main job. Like study is main job at one point in life, right? And I have a full-time job. That's the main job at one point in life. But we always have a side job as a startup.
So when you were growing up, like we always say metaphorically, right, around the dinner table, were there conversations about your dad's business, your mom's business, and you and your brother's ideas about what businesses to run or to start?
Yes, that's very common in our family.
And was that fun and exciting for you?
Yes, definitely. And the best part is not just our family, but our close friend work. We discuss stuff like that as well.
Right. So what were some of your early ideas? Do you remember?
Yes.
Because you're still not that old yet, right?
The first idea that we have is like rewind back 20 years ago.
Okay.
We opened the online game.
Okay.
Yeah, I think many people know that game, like Ragnarok.
Oh, I do.
Ragnarok Online. We opened the, don't want to say that, but we opened the not legal server to test to test whether we can get the player play in our server, and our server crashed about 1,000 players. Something like that. It was fun.
Right, but that was before there was AWS. You built your own servers.
Correct.
Wow. So you said. Wow, this is a completely different conversation, right? Because you come from kind of an entrepreneurial family. And your father and your mom, when they look at what you do and how you build things, they must look on with a little bit of envy, right? Because when your dad and mom started their company, there was no AWS. There was no funding from venture capitalists. There were no angel investors. It was just them convincing their friends and family or going to a bank and trying to raise money. So it's so different today, no?
Correct. And I couldn't agree more. Actually, my mom has a full-time job at IBM for the rest of her life, like 30 years. But my dad opened a startup.
Got it.
And I would say my dad was one of the most genius engineering at his time.
Fair enough.
But because of the environment is not ready,
right.
The support from the government, the funding, the open architecture technology that he can use is not there yet. So I think he had a hard time. If he start his startup today, he would be a star.
Does he ever talk to you about that? Like, oh my gosh, if I could start now.
Yes.
Does he say that to you?
Yes, we did have a lot of conversation like that.
That's awesome. But it's so good that you can actually go home, because a lot of people in the startup world, right, when they go home at night or when they go visit their parents, they can't really have a conversation with them that they'll understand. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think.
Right.
That never happened in my case.
For you, right? So you mentioned before that when you graduated from college, actually after you got your MBA, that you had a full-time job.
Correct.
So where was that?
I started at Citibank.
Okay.
Yeah, and moved 2 years after Citibank. My boss was invited by the CEO of TMB. So TMB is the fifth Thai bank in Thailand.
Got it.
And he was invited by the CEO, and he invited me to the TMB as well.
I understand.
I worked for 3 years as a digital strategy at TMB.
Right.
And in midway working at the TMB, I and my brother start another startup. We actually has a lot of startup idea along the way, but some of the startup grow organically to the level that we have to register the company for real, and then we start to have a real business.
Right. So I get that as well. There's so many people where they start something, they're trying something, but because they're not sure if it's going to turn into anything, they don't register it, they don't create an infrastructure around it, they're just kind of hoping that it works, and when it does, you have to do all this catch-up work. I want to talk a little bit about this role you had though at TMB. What was it called, like innovation and transformation?
Correct.
Right? Was that a new role that was created just for you? Or was it something that was already there and they just filled it with you because you had experience doing this kind of thing?
It's a new role created by the CEO. I'm the first batch that filled that role.
Got it. Okay. And what types of things were you meant to do inside the bank?
Basically, our job is to think like a startup and bring in new ideas to the bank and transform the bank.
Okay.
And I remember the time that at the beginning, this is a scope of work. I don't even know what I have to do with this
on day one,
1,000 people that I have to transform.
Right.
And there is a lesson learned I learned along the way that I cannot transform 1,000 people at the same time. No. I need a smaller group and that group has to be handpicked by me, something like that. So that's a small trick.
Was there any pushback, whether explicit or implicit, when you were at TMB against kind of transformation, in the sense that some people get afraid inside big organizations, right? I got this a lot at Goldman Sachs. You try to change the technology that people use, you try to change the methodology. And the people that have been there for a while always say something like, that's not the way we do it here. Did you experience that at all?
Definitely, and that's the major obstacle at the beginning.
Right.
The fortunate part is we have a strong support from the senior management,
which is very
chief
important,
C-level, all the C-level.
Right.
And that's where I learned that I cannot force people to change.
Right.
What I can do is I can select the person that has the nature to lead the change, willing to change, and I invite that person to join first. After the new things that they do has a good outcome, other people will get envy, and you have demand, the real demand right now.
I want to be part of that thing.
Right. So I cannot force people, but I can select who can I bring in.
Are there one or two things that you remember changing that you're proud of or that you can talk about?
Sure.
Go ahead.
So the first one is we changed the procurement policy, which is very important for the big corporate though. If you look at the procurement policy of the bank, you will never see startup can work with the bank at all, because the penalty fee, the duration time, the cash upfront that they need, startup can never work with organization like a bank.
Got it.
Right? And that's the first thing that I have to crack if I want to bring in the innovation to the bank. Right.
That's a really good point, actually. Go ahead.
So the first thing is we have to change the policy, but not all the department comfortable with changing the policy.
Right.
IT would be the very last one.
Would be the last one.
We post risk on them, right? The policy is not about finance, but also about the stability of our system as well.
Fair enough.
Right. So we talk to the business side first, and I pitch them with all the ideas in the startup world that they can bring in to create that revenue, basically.
Okay.
Right? And they buy in, and that's the very first person. Once one of the business unit buy in, more business unit buy in, and then after a year, I think. That requirement was pushed to the technology team and also the procurement team, and the real thing happened.
When you started seeing movement,
Yep.
what did that feel like? Was it exciting? Because it takes time, right?
Correct.
You can't walk in on day one and say, time to transform now. And it hurts, right? The first few months where it's just like, no, it's always no, right?
Correct.
When you start to see a little bit of movement, what does that feel like?
Feel like I have a baby. Yeah, I mean it, and that's a pro and con at the same time.
It's a great answer. Go ahead.
Yep. So I feel like my idea is coming true, and I try to nurture that idea.
Right.
I feel proud with that idea. At the same time, it make me face a hard time that some of the idea is bad. I can't deny that.
But fair enough though, right?
Yeah. So I feel like I'm too attached to the idea.
From you though, what's your acceptable level of hit rate, right? In other words, if you have 10 ideas, if 3 of them are amazing and 7 of them are bad, is that okay?
For me myself, that would be a good rate, like 20-30%.
Right.
But the very first, when I work at a big corporation, the very first idea has to be hit.
Well, it feels like it, right?
Yeah. So if I miss like the first 3 ideas, then I'm in trouble.
Right. So I always say innovation like that is like dating in a way. If your first date, the food goes bad or your date gets food poisoning, it's going to be hard to have the second date.
I like that metaphor.
You know what I mean? Right?
Exactly.
If it's a bad date, the second date's not going to happen.
Exactly.
Right. So fair enough. Look, you also did something with mentorship in the CEO. And maybe that's just because you were working so close with them, but why did that happen and what was that like?
Oh, that's one of the amazing thing in my life.
Yeah, tell me.
So, and before I go to what actually happened, that CEO is actually a legendary person in banking industry.
Still.
Now he already quit his job, and after he actually joined another bank, big bank, as a board member.
Okay.
Right.
But what was his legend? In other words, where did that legendariness come from?
Great. So rewind back to the 2012, I think.
Okay.
All the bank has their own. When you transfer money from one bank to the other bank, normally you have to pay a fee. Yes. And that's because all the banks cannot cooperate because they invest different amount of money into their infrastructure, right? They have to get their return on investment.
I understand.
But all the bank has the direction that moving people from offline to online is more cost effective for them, right?
For sure.
And to move people to online, you need to have almost zero fee to transfer money. Right.
Yeah, because otherwise you lose the efficiency that comes along with that, right?
Correct.
Right. Nobody will use it. Like you'll build this great system, but nobody will use it because why?
Correct.
Right.
He's the one who lead that thing to reality.
Okay.
Basically.
So he's the one that got all the bankers together and said,
correct.
You're going to do this, right?
Yes.
Right.
And that's tough.
Yeah, that's hard. Really hard. Okay, go ahead. So.
Yeah. So at the time, 1 year after I joined, TMB created a program called Young Leadership Program.
That's great.
And we can select a mentor. And the mentor can be CEO, chief, or 2 down from the chief.
Okay.
Right. And even before the program is open, I asked the HR which person that likely to have the most demand. And HR say it should be the CEO.
It should be.
I tell the HR, can I be the first in line to have the CEO as my mentor?
Good job.
The program doesn't open yet. And they say, okay, they can try. So I send the email to them. Before the program is open, and somehow I was fortunate enough to be one of the 2 person in the program that was selected to be mentor. Good and bad. Good thing is he is really legendary. So I have session with him, and every time I learn about how he actually find opportunities to create values, right? Like when he combined all the bank infrastructure together and create something that easy for end user to use, that's huge value. How can he see that opportunities? Right. I have 2 sessions with him because he's super busy. In 1 year of mentorship program, I only have 2 chances to meet with him.
Really?
Yeah, but that 2 chances is valuable.
I was going to say, is there something that you can take away? Because I want to get away from TMB in a second, but is there something you can take away from that experience, the innovation stuff, the transformation stuff, the challenge of actually doing that, plus the mentorship with the CEO that you still kind of think about today when you're building and running your own companies?
That's a good question. Uh, I think that the things, because I do the full-time job and also the startup at the same time. So actually knowledge kind of transfer. I learn from this side, I use from the other side. The things that I learned when I transform the big organization apply when I do ConvoLab. That's the first that not the first startup, but the first flying startup.
Yeah, the first one that actually worked. Yeah.
The one that actually worked. That's a better word. And ConvoLab sells to B2B. Basically, that's our business model. We sell to big corporate. So instead of we sell the whole solution, right, and we just let them transform their organization, we actually have plan how their organization can transform to use our program inside the organization. Right. So that's the knowledge that I take from the experience.
But it's so key, right? In other words, because if you just done the startup and hadn't worked at TMB and hadn't had those experiences, maybe you just would have gone in, we say like a bull in a china shop, right? And just said, take the whole thing. But you'd figured out the incrementality of building, and also that there needs to be a mindset change, which is one of the hardest things to do with a big company, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Really interesting. Go ahead.
Can I add one more thing?
Please.
So, and one more thing is the time that we start ConvoLab, ConvoLab is actually combined of AI technology and chatbot technology.
Okay.
And at that time, nobody know what is AI and what is chatbot.
When did you start it?
2016.
Okay, not that long ago, right? And how did you balance the time between, because at TMB, clearly you're very busy.
Yes.
Did you do it from like 11 o'clock at night until 4 o'clock in the morning? Did you do it all weekend? Or were you working with your brother on this? Like just so many little issues, right?
We both working on this like part-time.
Okay.
And I think it actually, if you really look at the time in a day, when we doing that, we were 20 something. Right. So we have time. What we done, we have time, we have energy. We just don't have money yet, basically. So we can spend like 8 hours working on full time, another 8 hours working on part time. And,
fair enough.
And the rest 8 hours we can do something else.
Right.
That is actually not that hard.
No, I don't disagree with you actually.
Yep. So that's how we manage the time. It's not a strict rule. Sometimes I have more full time workload, then I have to contribute more time. But overall, that's how we balance.
So tell me again, what exactly is ConvoLab? Convo conversation? No?
That too, and there is another meaning from the technology world.
Tell me.
It's a AI model called convolutional network.
Okay.
Right? So we combine those two words and create a ConvoLab.
Got it. So what exactly was it? You said AI and chat, but like how was the company meant to use it?
So we see the trend that younger generation start to use chat more than telephone call.
Sure.
Right? They chat faster than they talk. I don't know how, but it's actually reality.
But they do though.
Right? And big corporates start to see that trend that their customer service on the phone is not a good fit for new generation.
Not really.
They start to have chat channels like on web chat, inside app chat and stuff like that. Right? But they will face the same problem. They need some kind of automation because 80% of the conversation will be the same old one.
Right, the same
20% of the question contribute to 80% of workload.
Pareto principle.
And they're looking for tools to automate that kind of things.
Got it.
Right? So we create a technology on a chatbot. Chatbot is actually automation tools on chat channel and AI. AI is the intelligence system that make the conversation be more realistic, more human, more like you talk to the human.
I understand.
Right? So we combine these two technology together and we pitch to the corporate. The very first case is we pitch as a customer service. That's our first idea, customer service.
Right.
Somehow the corporate use it for sales first.
Really?
They want this tool to help them sell the product, introduce product to their clients.
So what kind of, I don't want to know the name, none of my business, but what kind of company was using it for sales? So what was their product?
FMCG.
Interesting.
Yes. And FMCG, their product is wide variety.
For sure.
Right? We can have like food, they have food product. They also have the cleaning product, a lot of stuff.
And was it really successful?
It is. They're still using us till today.
And was this, so again, you and your brother, right?
Yes.
I always want to understand the feeling, right? So you get your first client, you get your second client. Was there ever a moment where you and your brother were like, what do we do now? Because this thing's starting to move. Do you know what I mean?
Correct. Yes. yes, we had that moment before. We have a few of those moments. The first one is the moment that we realized that we have to register a company.
Right.
So we do it for fun, and when we pitch to corporate, somehow they take, and the contract size is huge. At that time, we never see that figure before.
Right.
So we have to start to register a company, and there was a time that our workload is too much. Then we have to start hiring people, right? So it's a time that one of us has to quit the company full time to join to work on this first.
Right.
My brother is the first one to quit because he is on the technology side. He is a CTO of the company.
He's the CTO. And where was he working? What kind of company was he working at?
At the time, he worked at IBM.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
I work at TMB. He worked at IBM at the time.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So our responsibility is like he will do all the tech stuff. The rest is on me.
The rest is on you.
Fair enough.
I was gonna say fair split actually. Both of them are big jobs, right?
Yes, and even it may sound like half. It's actually not, because at the time the tools has huge backlog that we have to fill. Right. So on the tech side, the workload is huge.
I'm sure.
So he is the first one who quit and worked full time on this company.
Got it. So he writes code actually.
Correct.
And what is it written in? Is it PHP? Is it Python? What is it? Do you know?
Node-RED.
Okay. Got it. Let's talk about what this company became and then how it kind of got merged into Amity. What is Amity?
Okay. Before we know Amity, the old name of Amity is Echo.
Echo, right? Echo Communications?
Echo Communication, correct. Right. And we know each other because we pitched the product to one of the clients. We won. But Amity has a great product, though. I would say. They do. Yeah, we just fortunate enough to win that deal,
right.
And we start to know each other. 1 year after that, Amity at the time it's Echo, right? Echo come back to us and talking about, are we interested in the merging deal?
Merging, right.
And coincidentally, at that time, we actually have an idea to scale our business at that time, because we start to have key person in place and everything. We are ready to expand the business, right? So we are actually looking for opportunities to expand, like fundings or acquisition or merging. Everything works.
Okay.
Right. So we spent like I think less than 2 months talking to each other, the management team talking to each other, and we finalized the deal.
Okay.
Maybe one of the fastest deal in the world on the M&A. Right. Yeah, and we talk a lot about people. Maybe just only people. We don't even do the technology fit and stuff. We're talking about people most of the time.
But I mean always, right? In every merger, and I don't care if it's Cisco merging with another service provider or Echo merging with your company. Yeah. It's really just the people, because if there's a human clash, if there's a people clash, it's just going to fall apart, and it's toxic because it's corrosive actually, because it's going to ruin both of these companies.
Correct.
It's really hard, right?
Correct. And if you can validate the people,
right,
you can presume that everything that they say is valid or not.
Absolutely.
Right? So you don't have to do a lot of due diligence and stuff.
No.
Right? That will come.
Yeah, I mean, I have this phrase that I like to use. If you lie, then you're a liar,
yeah.
Right? And then it's hard to trust anything that you say after that, even if all of it's true.
Correct.
Because the only experience you have is with that mistruth.
Correct.
It's super hard, right?
Yeah. I totally agree. And that is one thing that all the startup founder has to be very careful.
Yeah.
Their word mean their company.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. Were you nervous at all about giving up sort of CEO control, or was it good to join a team that you thought was really strong and was going to make the combined companies just stronger?
We think the combined company is stronger.
Right.
And at that time, my brother is stepping up as a CEO. I work as I call myself as a CFO, but actually my task is COO/CFO.
I got it.
Stuff like that.
Right.
So we actually gave up on the control of the company. But even before that, we know that we talk a lot with the CEO of Echo,
Korawat,
right? He's a great guy.
He is. He's been on the show as well. You know that, right?
Yeah. The fourth, the fifth, the third. The third
show.
Nice.
Right.
He's amazing. He's amazing.
He's a good guy.
Yep.
Yeah, I was impressed.
Very talented. So we decided that we will trust him and we join. So now he is the leader. Right now he is a CEO. My brother is now stepping up as a CTO and
Of the combined entity.
yeah, of the combined entity.
Good for him.
Yeah, he's very techy. That's good for him.
That's good.
Yeah, so I am a VP of venture, and under our venture we have one of the startup. So
Okay.
I am also a CEO of that startup.
But what does that mean? So it's interesting to me, right? So Amity ends up being a parent company or a holding company
Correct.
for at least ConvoLab and Echo. So it sits up here.
Correct.
But you're a VP of venture,
Correct.
but it's not really a venture company. So what does that mean for you? What is that role actually meant to do? What are you supposed to accomplish?
It's something in the future that Conrad plan to do. But for now, my whole responsibility is to make the subsidiary under Amity fly. Right. So that's why I have another title, which is a CEO of that subsidiary.
What is that?
The company name Onework provide a work anywhere solution for corporates.
Okay. And does that include Echo and ConvoLab? Or is it separate?
The separate.
Oh.
So maybe better to explain like this.
Please.
When we merge, right? Under Echo is the name of the company and the product at the same time before, right? But they also have another product inside of Echo.
Okay.
Echo company, they have another product, different name. ConvoLab merge in, and we have another product, different name. So and there is a Onework, which is the other product that different name.
Okay.
So they create an umbrella company. Right? That makes sense. So Echo become a product name instead of the company name.
I understand.
Right? And they create Amity. And after that, the Onework has interest from external investors. So they get this product spin off to separate entity.
And
as
you're the
subsidiary.
CEO of that.
Correct.
Okay. So do you think from a venture standpoint, do you think there are going to be more acquisitions? Is that the plan?
I think in the future is highly possible, but the roadmap to grow will focus on the product that we have,
On the
not
current
from
products.
the acquisition.
Right. So one of the things that I remember Correlot saying to me, and I may get the places wrong, but there's an office in London, an office in Portugal, an office in Austin,
Correct.
and the headquarters, I can't remember whether it's in the US or in London,
Milan?
in Milan now.
Milan, yeah.
How do you manage all that from here? And was that new for you? Because mostly your company was just operating in Thailand, right?
Correct. It's new for me. In short, it's totally new for me, and that's one of the strength of the Amity that we see, and that's why we decide to merge.
Got it.
It is a challenge though, so and it's different from team to team. For technology team, it is easier because you can have a stand-up meeting and you assign tasks and you have checkpoint along the way.
Sure. But
So
tech teams have been distributed
Yeah.
for years.
Correct.
That's true for a fact. Sorry, go ahead. I interrupted you.
Yep. And no worry. And some other team is more challenging, like sales,
Right.
Because we don't have a chance to really see what actually happened with their clients, right?
Right.
So we have to listen.
Right.
And I would say the key of success is you have to find when you have office internationally, you have to find a key person that very senior to control that area.
Right. And does COVID, so the inability to travel, make that harder?
Yes. Yes.
Look at you, like I need a drink. It definitely makes it harder.
Compared to the industry, not industry, but compared to the whole economy,
Right.
I think we are doing much better than average because
Fair enough.
we are essential tools for them to do business in when the offline was ruined. Right, so they have to move their business to online, and
It definitely benefits you as a company and for all the products because they're inherently online products.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, and we understand most of them that their business is at tough situation right now. They need our tools. We allow them to use, but maybe delay payment and stuff to help them.
Right. But they can see the value.
Correct.
Right. So I want to ask you this too. Does your ability to speak English help you in the management of the global business? Because you don't have to be afraid about your ability to communicate with people and understand them.
Understand. I try to learn Chinese too now. That's another big market.
Fair enough.
Okay, but I think that is very helpful for my case. I think it's more helpful because on the talent acquisition side,
of course,
I have a wonderful CTO on my subsidiary company. A wonderful CTO. He is from Silicon Valley.
Oh, great.
And I wouldn't have that if I cannot speak English.
No.
Right? So,
but did you go to international high school or no?
No.
You just went to regular?
Regular until Boston University.
So you did not have an English education until you went to BU?
No. The fun stuff is when I was young, I actually hate English.
Of course.
I cannot find logic in language.
Everybody does. You can't find logic in language.
I love math. I hate English.
But language is just like math, right? Because it is logical at some level. In its construction, it's logical. I always have this, again, philosophy that a great mathematician should be a great musician.
Okay.
Because it has logic.
Yes, when you understand the real fundamental
Absolutely.
to that level, right? But
it's not confusing at all because it has order and logic in it. Whether it's a guitar, a trombone, or a piano, it has that thing, right?
Yeah.
Whether you can do it or not, it's a different story. You should understand it, yeah?
Yeah, but I totally agree if you understand the root of where it's come from.
Right.
But in normal education for English, we normally memorize things.
I understand that.
Right? And that's why I hate it when I was young though. But sometimes in life, I realize that it's actually important, very important.
Super important,
and I start to catch up later down the road.
I always say that the culture of any country or any society is embedded in the language and the food. And if you don't try the food and you can't speak the language, you'll never understand the culture.
I believe that's true.
Yeah, I think that's what I truly believe in because I've lived all over the world. I've seen that, and that's why whenever I go to a country, I try to taste the food and understand some of the language, even if it's just the language structure. Because if I understand language structure, then I can understand the way you're thinking. Is that fair?
Yeah. I think that's true. And I see some of the case in some other language, like Japanese people is very polite because I think one of the factors is the language as well. Their words kind of soft and how they organize a sentence in a certain way.
Yeah, there's a lot of "if you allow me."
Yeah. Yes,
right?
yes, correct.
Yeah. So I speak Japanese.
Wonderful. I cannot speak, by the way.
It's okay. I wasn't going to test you, but good enough for me. Look, the last thing I'll ask you before I let you go, and this was great, I really appreciate you coming, is just from your perspective in the startup world, in the corporate world, what do you think is going to change the game in Thailand for tech startups?
Good question. I think I have a good mentor in the technology industry too.
For sure.
In a startup world. So one of the things that I totally agree is the Thailand has a lot of startup, and some of the startup is almost unicorn, but we don't have a real unicorn yet.
So you want that to happen?
Yes, and if that doesn't happen, all the funding from the investor will stuck right at that stage, right? They cannot go to larger stage and they release the fund back to support other startup, and that way it's stuck in the pipeline.
It's a good answer. In a way, it's almost like the dating analogy we made earlier, right? If the first date doesn't work, it's going to be hard to get the second one. So if you can't get to a super successful company that has some understood and well executed exit, then it's going to be hard to see that happening again.
Correct.
Is that fair?
Yes, correct. And investors look at Thailand as a country, right? Sometimes they have connection, they know individuals, but most of the time they see as a country. So they see statistics of this country, they see the number of unicorn. It doesn't look good.
For now.
For now, definitely.
I'm bullish.
Amity is trying to be the first unicorn. Let's see if we can do it.
Let's see if you can. Look, I really want to thank you for coming in today. Nattapon Kraisingkorn.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
VP of Venture.
Correct.
At Amity.
Correct.
Thanks again.
Thank you very much, Mike.
TDPK Podcasts, Thailand GameChanger. Inside the minds of Thailand's innovators.